Dr. Story is a chiropractor from Canberra. Has been a chiropractor there for 24 years. He specializes in sports medicine. He has been a BMX bike racer since he was 10 years old. He was inspired by the 1984 LA Olympics and Greg LeMond. He decided to customize his father's 10-speed. He was trying to make it lighter by drilling holes in the frame. It worked.
It got lighter.
and he started long-distance bike rides. Eventually, he got involved in mountain biking and triathlons. Currently, he rides for fun. He still enters some cyclocross races, and he likes gravel bikes off-road. And you can sometimes find him on his BMX bike riding the Swap Wee bike track in Westlake. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Adam Story.
So, if you go out to the general public, what you will find is that most people have beautiful teeth and terrible spines. And the reason why is because our entire life, we've all taken care of our teeth twice a day, but we really don't take care of our spines until we're about 40 years old, because that's when we start to hurt. So, what I'm going to cover tonight is some ways we can kind of backtrack a little bit and try to regain some ability and strengthen our core, because it's very vital that you don't want a CD. That would be important, but it's more vital that you don't end up doing something where you're trying to help yourself and then you actually hurt yourself and then end up, not with me, but with a surgeon. So the history of abdominal training and back training simply goes back to bodybuilding. If you search for the word core, there is no actual core muscles. So stay with that thought for a second. But back when Arnold Schwarzenegger was building his muscles and things, there was no such thing as a core. Nobody ever called it a core. What they called it was abdominal muscles and back muscles. Very simple. The way they trained it was by doing sit-ups, deadlifts, and what are called hyperextensions. Those were the only exercises that really existed for abdominal muscles and back muscles. That's all we called it. Now, sometime late 70s, early 80s, someone back then, they were marketing infomercials where you would buy an 8-track tape or a VHS tape, and you would buy a tape on how to exercise. Everybody remembers Buns of Steel, right? I still have that tape. So someone, a personal trainer selling a bunch of tapes, actually ended up calling the abdominal muscles the center of the body, like an apple. What's in the center of an apple? Core. The core. And hence grew the word core. The core in the beginning only was the muscles in the front, what are called the rectus abdominal muscles. It was a sales decision. There's no such thing. You can't go to a medical textbook, a chiropractic textbook, an osteopathic textbook, any anatomical textbook. You will never see a pointer pointing at a muscle that's called the core. So understand that when I say the word core, it's actually grew out of a marketing term to sell you infomercial types of product. Today, by the way, people talk differently too. What are the biceps called to young people? Guns. Nobody knows they're called biceps anymore. They're called guns. What are your thighs called? Thanksgiving hams. Okay? Now the new thing is people are talking about exercising their posterior chain. what the heck is a posterior chain? I don't know. Maybe there's an anterior chain. There is. So people have to take exercises and redefine them in order to sell and make exercise exciting again. So the word core started out with the rectus abdominis muscle. Then they found that that wasn't just the only muscle that was important in the center of our body. There's other muscles. There's the oblique muscles. Now there's an external oblique and an internal oblique. Since you can't see the internal oblique, that isn't the one that's important. The external oblique is the one that's important and suddenly became part of core training. This is where you see people lying on their side and doing this type of exercise or holding dumbbells and bending to the side. Then, a lot of people with back pain will get pain in a muscle called a quadratus lumborum, which massage people usually find when they dig their elbows or thumb into you. You go through the roof, and we pay for that. Right? But the thing is, that's an important muscle for back pain, so that became part of the core. Then they realized that there's other muscles that connect to the pelvis, which is part of the core, such as one of the muscles of your quad. Quad has how many parts? 4. 50 is close. You're a little off by a couple, but it's a good guess. Thanks for participating. There's one muscle of your thigh that actually connects to your pelvis. Uh-oh, that's part of the core. Then your hamstrings are technically part of the core. Then the gluteal muscles, there's 3 of them on each side. Those are part of the core. Then the lats, or the wing muscles, actually connect from our shoulder to half of our middle back, all of our lumbar spine, and our pelvis. That's part of the core. Now we've got a problem, because when people talk about the core, we're talking about all the muscles from the shoulder almost to the knee. Well, when you include all the muscles, what does that mean? So when you read about the core, depending on who you're reading, they have different definitions of the core. Well, let's define what the core is so that when we're talking about it, we're all on the same page. Any muscle that keeps your torso, your rib cage, attached to your pelvis, we're going to call the core. And we're not going to name the muscles like rectus abdominis and obliques and stuff like that, because one of the problems with training the core was the old-fashioned exercise that I talked about, which was the sit-ups, leg lifts, back extensions, and deadlift. About 20% of the population generally can do anything they want and they will not destroy their backs. The problem with these exercises I just mentioned is that about 80% of people, as we age, the spinal discs in between the bones of our spine no longer can tolerate the exercises we once did when we were 19 and 20. So what used to work for you kind of doesn't work anymore, unless you're one of that great 20% that can basically do anything. And there's a percentage of people, genetically, they can do anything and nothing breaks them. Then you have a small percentage of the population that they sneeze and they herniate a disc. But most of us are somewhere in the middle, that if we do certain exercises that damage our spine, we'll probably have problems. But if we do exercise that benefit our spine, we tend to benefit from that. So in the early to middle 90s, there was a guy who was a instructor, a professor in Canada. And his name was Stuart McGill. Anybody ever heard the name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, like, oh yeah, okay. All right. Smart guy. He's not a medical doctor, but rather he's a PhD in spinal biomechanics. Now, in the 70s and 80s, they didn't have the technology to know this information. With greater technology comes greater knowledge. And so what he found was for a great majority of people, sit-ups, great for the rectus abdominis. No one's arguing that. But a lot of people end up having problems with their spinal discs because of it. One of the key things that he found was that anything where you go forward and twist, actually, over time, will damage most people's discs. He is now considered the leading researcher, not in Canada, not in North America, but the world. So he is the leading dude that knows everything there is to know, at least currently today, on the discs. Now, this does not relate to cycling, but just to give you an idea, you know those strongman competitions that you see on ESPN, where the guy from Bulgaria pulls a truck with his teeth? When those guys get injured, Stuart McGill is the guy that helps them. So if they can pull a truck with their teeth, we should be able to get the bike out of the back of our car. So one of the key features that he has people, one of the key features of what he teaches is you have to know how spines are injured and thus stop doing that. The key thing that injures people's spines is bending forward and twisting. Now, how many of us, when we think of training our core, get down on the ground, do a sit-up, and take the right elbow and bring it to the left knee? That's what he's talking about. If you're one of the 20%, you could probably do it. If you're one of the 80%, it's just a matter of time before you start getting a strong rectus abdominis, but a lot of back pain. So he developed exercises that don't do that. He also found that the back extension, where you lean over the side here and you lift yourself up, is a great exercise to develop strength in your back muscles, the erector spinae. Sure, it develops strong back muscles, but the problem is, as we age, we tend to lose some bone, which, as you know, cyclists, it's not really a weight-bearing sport, so we need to do stuff about that, like mix and match some of our exercise with some weight-bearing exercise. But as we age, generally we lose bone, and as we age, we, as cyclists, don't even do a lot of weight-bearing exercise. That spinal extension exercise produces a lot of compression forces on the bone. I just had a patient recently who had just woke up with back pain. They always wake up with back pain. It's never that they woke up. It's what they did the day before, but they never believed me. So, sent her for an x-ray, compression fracture. It happens all the time. It happens all the time to a person who just stepped off the curb and misstepped the curb and felt something give in their back. What gave was their bones. Ouch. The spinal extension machine, no one's doubting that it builds muscle. The problem is it's too much compression for the actual bone. So, what the heck are the exercises then? Here's what I found. There's three main exercises that he tells people to do. And what I found is, in my practice, some of them are a little hard to teach. So I start people kind of at the beginning, which I'm going to show you. Basically, you're getting an appointment tonight, by the way. And the good news is no copay. Because your insurance doesn't pay for this anyway. Did you know that? They don't pay for these things. They never pay for anything. Anyway. So what happens is I'm going to show you how I go through the process of teaching people how to do these exercises. But usually, because most people were trained and think that core training means sit-ups, and core training means bending forward and twisting. Russian twist. Did anybody try Russian twist where you grab something heavy and you just twist your body like that? Great exercise. Except for one problem. Research kind of shows that that was for Russians, young ones. if they didn't win the goal, they were out. Yeah. So it's almost like that old, what's that old story where, I remember this, where they would throw 12 eggs at the wall, and whichever eggs fell down and didn't break, that's the one they used. Is that, anybody remember that story? That's how they trained back in the days. Find out who's strong, try to break everyone, whoever survives is the Olympic athlete. So these exercises, the goal of these exercises are to maintain good posture, hold good posture, and prevent movement so that when you use your legs to pedal a bike, the leg muscles actually have something to push against. Everybody's seen the guy, hopefully it's not you, but everybody's seen the guy when you're riding the bike, and you can see behind him, he's like that, all over the place. And you ask him, are you comfortable on your saddle? And the funny part about it is they'll always go, yeah, I love the saddle. Wow, that guy's comfortable. The stronger these muscles are, the more likely you're going to be able to be stable. And when you pedal, it just goes down. So what I do first is I try to teach the patients how to contract the muscles in a good posture. So the average person, when I tell them, I want you to contract the muscles of your core. And recently, I've had to try to come up with some different analogies, because the analogies aren't working anymore for me, because anybody, I'm going to say, under the age of 30 doesn't get this. I tell people, act as if Rocky Balboa was going to punch you in the stomach. You know, most people under 30 do. Who's Rocky Balboa? I got to come up with something different. What I tell people to do is take their finger and poke it right below their neck, or that in the middle. And I want them to take a deep breath in. So when they take a deep breath in, like this, I want them to notice that their chest comes up. They actually end up in good posture. Then, when they let the air out, they notice it goes down. So when you inhale, when your chest comes up like this, without you even thinking about it, your spine, your brain turns on the spinal erector muscles. So when you're like this, these are very flaccid. They're not actually contracting. You're just compressing your spinal bones and your discs. When you inhale deeply, the muscles actually turn on. Spinal erector muscles means those muscles erect the spine. That's what they call them. So when I have a patient first start out, I tell them, here's what I want you to do. I want you to find the good posture. Take your finger here, take a deep breath in. They breathe in, and then I tell them, now this time when you let the air out, don't let this fall. And they have trouble. It's actually, you try it, it's kind of hard. So you take a deep breath in, and then when you let the air out, just blow the air out, but don't let it fall. This is where I want people to start. Because when I tell people, tighten your abdominal muscles, you know what people do? Their brain, because they've done sit-ups all their life, they do this. This is not the posture you want. It's not the posture you want on the bike. It's not the posture you want in real life. Okay? So this is bad. So what I want people to do is I want people to just start out with taking a deep breath in, they breathe in, and then when they let the air out, they just hold it. Now you're in good position. Now anything you do at this point is going to be awesome. So what happens now is we want people to learn how to control their abdominal region as if it was a corset, okay? Rather than just the rectus abdominis muscles, the front ones. So when I tell people to control these, they go forward. So I tell people to squeeze their love handles, but right above the love handles. Nobody likes a love handle squeeze, right? No. So they squeeze them in there. You can see me pressing right now. So what I want them, this is where the Rocky Balboa thing comes in. I tell them, tighten the muscles as if you had to stand there like this, and Rocky Balboa is going to take a sucker punch to hit you from the side. Okay? You tighten like that. That's what protects your organs. But what I want people to do is, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to squeeze in, I'm going to make it soft, and then tighten. So So tighten, it's as if you're holding your breath. So you take a deep breath in, and you're like going to the bathroom, a bad one. That's what we start with. Now eventually we have to teach them to breathe, because breathing is not overrated. When patients pass out in the chiropractic office, they're generally okay, it's just bad advertising, you know? So I want them to take a deep breath in, let the air out, don't let this thing drop, and then learn how to contract that. Now at first you gotta teach them how to just, you know, it's called a Valsalva maneuver where you bear down. It's as if you're going to the bathroom, or sometimes people they don't have any control of this. So what I do is I tell them a joke. How many chiropractors does it take to screw in a light bulb? And the answer is, while they're thinking about it, they have no idea. And you say, you don't want a chiropractor just putting in a light bulb, they'll just keep twisting it until it pops. Sometimes it gets laughed. But either way, it's a stupid joke. But they'll usually laugh, and they'll go, ha ha, oh. They'll contract. If you've ever seen a comedy that's so funny, the next day, what hurts? Your stomach. You've been using your correct muscles. So, usually I'll try to get them to have a joke, or I'll tell them to cough. Now, you can't tell people to cough now because everybody's afraid of coronavirus. Anyway, but you tell them to cough, or sneeze, or laugh, or have a bowel movement. One of those usually works. You have to experiment with yourself and see which one it is. But you want to be able to be standing up straight, tighten these muscles. That's step one. If you can be in good posture and tighten the muscles, now we've got you going. Now it's going to work. Now, what you do is you start training. And you start doing planks like this. So what happens is, because it really depends on the person, how in shape they are at the moment versus their age, versus their prior training. Some people, they're just built like steel. And you can take a 70-year-old and just have them start doing it on the floor. Other people, I like to start with kind of a chair or a kitchen counter or something like that. So what happens is I'll have them up against the kitchen counter, and I'll have them take a deep breath in, let the air out, tighten the muscles, and they'll get kind of in this position. Okay? So this is the beginning. This is where you could start feasibly. Now, once a person is in this position right here, and it becomes easy, how do we make it harder? Lower. So instead of a kitchen counter, you do something like this. So now,